So, hello, folks. My name is Jim Worthen. The show is Worthen One. We're here on Channel 17, Cox Cable, on the South Coast, Carpinteria to Goleta, but we're also on several other platforms. If you go to TVSB and their website and get to the demand button, and you go all the way down the demand to Worthen One. They tell me it's not because they don't like me. They tell me it's the last in the alphabet or something stupid. I know they hate me. And then you can go to YouTube and search Worthen One, and the last 10 shows are there. They tell me that they just peel off at 10, but you can find 200. But the last 10 productions are there. My guest today, who I have, I think, run into a couple of other times, but just really met today, is Jeff Shaffer. And Jeff is got several hats over the years here, and the most recent shows have been people that have been on before, but this one we got to delve into who this guy really is. So it's back to the way it was 3 months ago. Jeff, where were you born?
I was born in San Jose, California in 1964.
San Jose?
San Jose, Bay Area.
What year?
1964.
I think I was working at a Lee's shoe store up there, a grand opening. Anyway, I'm obviously then almost 20 years older than you.
Yeah.
So we won't ask your age, because that always hurts me. What were your parents like?
I lived in the same home my whole life, so 18 years. My mom was a school teacher. My dad worked for juvenile hall.
Who?
So my dad worked for juvenile hall.
Juvenile hall?
Yeah, so he ran kind of the juvenile
kind
hall,
of
San Jose. Yeah.
Law enforcement.
Yeah, law
probation,
enforcement, all that.
And incarceration of juveniles.
Yeah, so he really cared about young people in a lot of ways. It was a difficult job, but.
In those years, I had a cousin who became a lieutenant in the San Jose Police Department, and it's amazing how you run into other factors that you cross paths. Those days, San Jose wasn't the easiest community for law enforcement. It had a lot of really white crime.
It was a big city, right?
Yeah.
So I really loved my time in the Bay Area, but glad to be in Santa Barbara now.
So, where did you go to school?
For college, I started at high school.
Yeah.
Lehigh Longhorns. Lehigh School.
Lehigh. Yeah. So it was public school.
Public school. Went to public school.
Because the Catholic schools in that area were very well endowed by Bob Hope.
Yeah. It was not a.
And Bing Crosby.
It was not a private school. Yeah. No. So our rivals were Los Gatos Wildcats.
And what was the high school again?
Lehigh Longhorns. Yep.
You play Redwood City?
I don't think so. I don't think they were in our league.
Yeah. I asked because I had an uncle living in Redwood City, as you know.
Yeah.
And so after high school, I assume you graduated. You weren't a bad person, and
class clown of my. So I had many run-ins with my principal. I just managed to walk the tightrope of not being expelled. So I made it through with a 3.1. All my friends had the 4-point whatevers, but I had a 3.1, so I had enough to get me through. So I went to UC San Diego. My hope was to be a comedy writer. So I wanted to write for Saturday Night Live, or I wanted to write
comedy writer.
Comedy writer.
That's why you've been taking notes on all my jokes.
right. I for sure have been. So that was my goal. I love to make people laugh. I was kind of anti-authority, questioned institutions. So went to UC San Diego in 1980, end of 80, fall of 82.
So you went there for 2 years?
Yeah, I went there for 2 years. And during that time is really when I had, so while I was going to Lee High School and I was doing my hijinks, there were a lot of churches that were reaching out to me. So I was kind of number one on a lot of prayer lists, let's put it that way. So, but I had no interest. I had no interest in going to church. I had no interest in that at the time. So when I went to UC San Diego, a lot of my friends that were still trying to reach me, I remember getting a New Testament in the mail from a friend of mine, and she said she put one little note, and she just said, "Read it, stupid," because I'd never actually read the Gospels. So when I read the Gospels, I realized that Jesus was unique, and me being a little bit of a radical myself, I really became attracted to the radical nature of the gospel. So it wasn't so much heaven and hell, all those kind of things, but when I read about Jesus and I read about the way he cared about people and the vulnerable and what he did, right? I mean, he.
Now, was that the era that the border was closed to Tijuana and?
I don't think so, because I remember going over there.
Yeah.
When I was at UC San Diego, but that really changed the trajectory of my life. So at that point, I dropped out of UC San Diego 2 years when I was a sophomore. Went back to the church that had been doing outreach to me.
Went back where?
To Los Gatos. Went back to a church in Los Gatos, Calvary Baptist, and I said, I don't know anything, but I want to follow Jesus. And the youth pastor brought me on staff. So I really didn't know anything. The freshmen I was discipling knew way more than me about anything related to scriptures. But Ralph just brought me on and said, do all the fun stuff, do all the funny skits. But I think he saw that I was a leader and I was serious about it. And so I got mentored.
Back being you are writing these comedy routines down, when you were in Los Gatos, did the Bible smell like onions?
I don't know.
That area there on the...
Oh, that's, I know what you're talking about. That's...
further north.
Further north, yeah.
So, where did you get your first Bible?
Where did I get my first Bible? Probably it was mailed to me. It was that New Testament. And then, of course, I got one when I started working in that youth ministry. Yeah,
I asked that because if you were in a church setting when you were like third grade, the tradition is, and our president has even, in one debate, pulled out his third grade Bible that he was given, and so that's kind of the tradition with youth. Is that,
right. Yeah, for sure.
And somebody said to me, "Oh, the president used his grandmother's Bible to," and I said, "No, that was the Bible his grandmother handed him when he was in third grade."
Yeah.
Because a parent or an adult took it from the pastor and gave it to these 10 third graders.
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, I think I mentioned I grew up Catholic, right? And when I was in third grade, instead of going to Catholic church, I wanted to play football with my friends on Sundays. Yeah. So I stopped going. So I don't know if I remember they had books of catechisms and stuff like that, but I don't think I read anything. I didn't read the scriptures, definitely.
Yeah, that was in the sad era of our lack of communication between the Catholics and the Protestants. I have a godson who won't go to a Protestant church now. He was raised as a Catholic, and it just won't go. And it was an era that ecumenicalism changed, and they had the prettier girls. So,
I happen to believe that Christ works through all kinds of institutions. We may not agree. We may not agree on all the dogma or the way different denominations think about things. But at the end of the day, it's Christ that He's the person we need to know.
Christ-centered.
Yeah.
in Bible study this morning, we got into the discussion because Paul in Ephesians and all through the scriptures talks about the church. And it's really two churches. It's the physical church in Ephesus or Rome, but it's the church universal that usually Christ and the apostles were talking about. It wasn't the physical churches. And
yeah, it can't be, because if you look historically at the church, it was in houses, it was in homes, it was in neighborhoods, or it was China, it was in homes, you know. So there's so many ways that God mysteriously works. But I believe the bottom, what we call kind of what Jesus wanted people, what the center point is, Jesus Christ is Lord.
Yeah. Family.
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters?
I've got 2 brothers, both older, so I was the youngest, so I got away with more, which is probably why I was class clown and everything like that. I have an older brother, David, who's in Mount Shasta, and in between, Kevin, who worked for Fish and Game, and he lives in Davis. So
No sisters.
no sisters. That probably would have helped us a little.
Yeah. Where you married?
I am married. I've been married to Julia for 32 years.
We're back to San Diego.
We're close. We're in San Jose, so at that church. But
Right after
and
you
then we
came
moved.
back from,
Yeah,
That's why God brought you back from San Diego.
maybe.
Tell your wife that.
Yeah, I will. And then I've got 3 kids. Kairos, who's 23, and then I have
Kairos?
Kairos, yeah. So the word in Greek
Yeah.
means that God's at a
Not
point
like
in
the
time.
guy on Gutfeld.
No. But it's a really special word. It means that God's appointed time. And then Kenna and Caleb, twins, boy and girl. Kenna, Caleb, twins. They're 20. Kenna goes to Westmont, and Caleb is currently working. So, wonderful kids.
Wait, twin boys.
Girl and boy.
Oh, so I thought you didn't have any daughters.
Oh, I thought you meant I didn't have a sister. I didn't grow up with
I
somebody
got
who
it.
probably would help the
You're
3
right,
boys
you're
get
right.
along.
Worthen stupid. You're right. That's where we were with siblings. Your mother was a school teacher. Your dad was in probation, law enforcement, incarceration, and their whole lives, they.
Pretty much, but you know, it was back in the day when people worked the same job for a long time, and I don't feel like that's today.
That's true. That was true government jobs. They'd stay till retirement. Today, unfortunately, I think they opt out, grab their pension after 20 years. Although maybe that's the purpose. Now they can go on and go into a church.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I mean, I've done, how many different things have I done over the past 20? I've probably done 5 completely different organizations over the past 20 years, right? All because of opportunities that I get.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way it is now. And you got to be kind of able to kind of adjust and move. And it's actually kind of fun too, freeing to get to go on kind of an adventure and understand different things and learn from different people. And
They like Westmont?
do my family? Yeah, Kenna goes to Westmont. She enjoys it. She'll be graduating this year. So yeah.
So did we establish you had 2 brothers?
Yeah.
And it just blew by me. What do they do as far as profession or occupation?
David right now, he has a property in Mount Shasta, so he does a little bit of farming on that property, and Kevin's retired. So I'm the one still doing the 40 hours a
Both
week.
your parents are still alive?
My mom's still alive. We live on the same property with my mom and Julia's mom, my mother-in-law. My dad passed away, I think, in 2004.
Oh.
Or 2005, a little while after we had the twins.
So, do you know what direction your children are going to go in? Have they said, oh, I'm going to go into this nonprofit, or I'm going to go into Google or, you know.
No, I have to say it's still very much in the air on where all three of them different. All three of them different things they like to do. I think they're all. I believe Kenna wants to be. She's studying to be a teacher, so I think she wants to teach second graders, which is great. I think Kairos may want to go overseas. All my kids are also British citizens through my wife and her dad, because she's English, she's British. So they all have opportunity to do some stuff
I
outside.
missed that part. Your wife's British?
Yeah, yeah.
Where did you meet her?
I met her at the church I was working at. So
In California?
In California, yeah. So they have options.
Does-
And I like that. I like the fact that, there's a lot of history overseas. There's a lot of other things they can do.
Well, with the new administration, we're checking passports.
I know.
Have you seen your wife's passport?
I know.
The first illegal alien that I really got to meet was the wife of a broker in the real estate company I was in, and she wanted to get a green card, and she couldn't because she didn't have a passport. She had been his wife and 20 years in this country as an illegal alien, Canadian.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll give a shout out. I'm very thankful for organizations like Immigrant Hope that are helping people become citizens, right?
Say that organization again.
Immigrant Hope.
Are they over on?
They're on the west side. What's the name of that street?
Chapala.
San Andreas, maybe might be the street they're on.
No.
Next to a church.
That's over in the Ocean Meadows church site, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So great organizations like that
Yeah. Well,
are loving on families.
we need to know about the kind of organizations that will guide good people into becoming good citizens instead of being underground and hiding, because somebody who came over as an illegal alien a year or 2, 3 years ago, there are ways, if they want to be legal, that we can help them, I think.
Yeah, I think when we were talking before, I talked about the other, Santa Barbara has the other side of the postcard. I mean, people come to Santa Barbara, the beaches, the wineries, all the great things about Santa Barbara. But on the other side of the postcard, there are a lot of people that are misunderstood or are underserved or more vulnerable. Yeah. And in my experience, policy is not necessarily the only thing that's going to change that. People have to get involved, people with people, and try to develop systems so that people can get the help they need. So and that's, to me, that's the way that Jesus kind of lived. It talks about the incarnation, right? The incarnation was in John 1, talks about how he lived in the center of camp so that all populations had equal access to Christ.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important, that he lived amongst the vulnerable. And so we have to do the same. We have to understand the people sometimes we have the hardest time to understand. Both ways.
As we go through this and as we discuss it, I've delved into it because of my political background, that the groups and the services that you talk about are from the bottom up, not from the bureaucracy or government orders down. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so what we focus on, so if you Google collective impact, right? So you go on Google and you find that it's a strategy to solve issues of poverty, homelessness, human trafficking, some of the crime, if you want to talk about foster care. There are ways that you bring all partners together and create a common agenda, collect data, and move forward. So to me, working with the government, working with churches, working with nonprofits, for-profits, volunteers, business owners, restaurant owners, hoteliers, I need to pull everyone together to move in the same direction. So government has their strategies, people with lived experience have their strategies, business has their strategies, nonprofits their strategies. So how can we all work together to make something happen? rather than putting it all on the government or putting it all on church or putting it all on the people experiencing homelessness or whatever themselves, say, hey, let's bring 30 of the experts into the room and figure out over the next 3 years, how can we reduce homelessness together? Government, what's your role? Faith community, what's your role? Business, what's your role? People on the streets, what's your role? And convene everyone, create the plan, move forward. So to me, everyone has a role. I never want to leave anyone out of the actual, opportunity to make change. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, I like what you're saying, and I checked yesterday. You had a meeting of about 100 people up in Santa Maria.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to describe that meeting, and then I'll tell you what a friend of the show and a dear friend of mine, Chrissy Lozano, said about it. She was delighted to meet you and spend 5 or 10 minutes talking to you. So what was the thing about?
So part of Kingdom Causes, right? So I'm the catalyst for Kingdom Causes. Part of our work is working with the county's human trafficking task force to end modern day slavery. We like to call it Santa Barbara where no one's bought or sold. That's our goal, right? So the event yesterday in Santa Maria was put on by the Rotary. And they invited, I think there were 4 different survivors from across the state who spoke. There were experts in law enforcement. And then Megan Ranschild and I both spoke. So she spoke. She founded the task force under Victim Witness, the DA's office. And I am running both part of our collective impact model with Kingdom Causes and also SAFE, which is our strategic alliance to fight exploitation. That's our donor-advised kind of arm, gas in the tank for everything we're trying to do. So the event was really bringing all those people together with the Santa Maria community to talk about what we're doing. And there was a presentation on how to help kids that are being exploited online. What do you, how does the grooming process start? So it's very educational too.
None of this is paid for by the government, or do they give you grants?
So my work with the DA's office, it's paid by a federal grant.
Oh.
So some of that pays for my time, and some of that time we raise or funds ourselves, and then the Rotary event was paid for primarily by the Rotary and I think some other donors.
I've met him and been at presentations. I hear that our DA is very nonpartisan and very helpful to the community.
Yeah, it's been my experience.
Huh?
That's been my experience. Which you have to be in that position.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah, it's, even some pastors are in that position where they can preach Christ, but they don't want to drive somebody away from the church because Christ will act in his time. But if they're not there, maybe not. Mm-hmm. So DA's office, how's our one, people don't know this, and I always throw it in, our only countywide Republican elected. How's Bill Brown with you? Sheriff Brown.
Yeah, Sheriff Brown. I have been in meetings with him, or I've been in presentations with him. The sheriff's office hosts our human trafficking detective, right? So we have one detective on some of these bigger cases countywide. So we work in conjunction with Bill Brown and his office. I'm not so much involved in the prosecution side as I am in the trying to prevent human trafficking or intervene earlier or raise money or protect survivors.
So your group isn't told to follow up right through incarceration and visit them in jail or?
No, there are teams of people that do that.
Yeah.
My job is primarily, like I said, we have a 3-year strategic plan. We're all going in the same direction. We're focused on education in schools for prevention. We're focused on caring for women experiencing homelessness with high risk factors of domestic violence or being homeless. And we're focusing on how can we help young boys and girls under the age of 18 who are being trafficked in our county. How can we prevent that? And then as it's happening, how can we intervene early to get them all the services they need? So then what we need to count on is law enforcement and DA's office and sheriff, whoever, to work the prosecution side. We try to serve the individuals that are in the midst of it. We count on others to do the prosecution. We do have to be at some level in communication, but kind of have the experts do what they do best.
I, long ago, in discussions like this, in fact, on a radio show, I made a statement, and boy, did I get flack. I said, if I caught someone in a room molesting a 6, 7, 8-year-old child, I'd kill him as quick as I could. And I go, well, you'll be prosecuted. And I said, I'll leave it up to a jury to decide, because it's a heinous crime. I happen to feel it's worse for boys because it confuses their sex. Girls, it's horrible, but they're still a woman. They grow up to be a woman. Boys, I'm sure, and I don't know if you found, tend to become repeaters more than women do. In other words, molesters themselves. And it's...
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the exact data on any of that, but I can tell you that, I think the ramifications are the same with both boys or girls. And the reason why we need to intervene earlier or prevent it is because if intervention doesn't happen, the life expectancy of people who've been trafficked, sex trafficked, is 7 years post when they come out.
7 years
7
from now?
years.
Or
so let's say they're trafficked at 12 years old to 18. If there's not enough intervention once they exit the life, their life expectancy is...
Commit suicide?
Yeah, there's several factors to it. Sometimes being in the life in itself is dangerous. Mental health issues, physical health issues, just the trauma that happens to you every day. I think that people... so if I talk about the two things I've focused on, right, for the past 20 years are ending homelessness and ending human trafficking. Homelessness has its own vulnerabilities. If you're on the streets every day, the trauma you feel is every day because you're surviving every day. The mental health issues, right? So you have everyday trauma.
Where am I going to sleep tonight?
Where am I going to sleep? The way people look at you. Do I eat healthy? And it's right in front of your face. So if you go down State Street, I can talk to anyone about homelessness, and they'll say, yeah, homelessness is an issue here. But if I talk about human trafficking, most people are not aware that it's an issue here. But we work with Noah's Anchorage. So there's another great organization called Noah's Anchorage. I'll go through this data real quick, and then you can ask your question.
The homelessness makes good TV and good copy. The human trafficking is a one-night story on the TV, and then
it's usually
it's
usually wrong in the way that it's reported. It's reported as international flavor being thrown in the back of a van, while most of it's actually a grooming long-term process that happens to vulnerable kids.
Yeah.
But just to give you a story about how it's really happening, working with Noah's Anchorage and the CIYMCA, they're a youth shelter. They have a drop-in center, and they do outreach, right, to kids, and they also work with 18, I believe, to 24-year-olds. From January to May of 2024, they worked with 13 unique individuals under the age of 18 that were confirmed of being trafficked. So that's
in this county,
in the small pocket of this county, in this city, around one agency. So that gives you
the city of Santa Barbara, or that's all up in Santa Maria.
Well, some of these kids are coming from different areas, but I'm just telling you, you're talking about, what is that, a 6-month period working with 13 girls that have been in our city that are being trafficked. So those are the girls, some of the girls we know about. Multiply that by the girls we don't know about, or boys, right? So I want to talk about both of them. The reality is that it's hidden and more, and that we need to bring awareness to it, and not just awareness, but we need to bring solutions. So a lot of what we do with the Strategic Alliance to Fight Extortation, we have a major fundraiser on March 16th, is to raise some money for our case manager for these girls, right? So we're going to raise money for a 3-year position so somebody can intervene earlier and help them manage them through the system so we get healthy, empowered outcomes for them, right? So that's the work we have to do.
Once you've identified and the person needs and wants help, I've only heard of one ministry that gives them a job. What do you do with this, with these people? They need help. You don't want to put them into the welfare system, although that's where many end up on government aid. Are churches actively helping?
Yeah, I would say we're exploring more and more on how that can happen. There are partners like Hope Refuge, right? Which I don't know if you've heard about Hope Refuge, but it's housing for kids that have been trafficked. So it's that's a way that they'll get housing and supports and maybe opportunities, right? Because they'll be around people that might offer work or more permanent housing once they get through that program. So there are those kinds of opportunities. We have a missions conference on February 1st,
That's
Saturday.
True. That's the reason for our show. Go ahead.
Yeah, there we go. That's right. And in that mission conference, we're going to be talking at our breakout session about how churches have become spaces of love, purpose, and belonging.
February 1st, First Presbyterian Church. Cheap.
Yeah.
Box
so
lunch.
Come join us.
Come at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'll be there getting pastry and coffee.
Yeah. So we're really beginning to bring more faith communities in and say, this is your role. So churches can sign up for like 4 sessions with Kayla and myself. So Kayla works alongside Kayla Peterson's on our team. And we're going to offer 4 kind of consultations with churches on how they can become that. And I think ideas like that, and also, so we also are going to start a Neighborhood Action Collaborative. We're going to try to recruit some businesses into our Santa Barbara City team, because I believe there are business owners who are like, oh yeah, now the person has to be ready for a certain level of employment, but I know people will come out and say, yes, I will help. So it's all about coordination, actually having the conversation and getting the word out.
The mission conference on February 1st, I have 2 instances. I told you about Father Bob. And he had this homeless breakout, and I told him I've never met a truly homeless person. They're all bums on State Street. They're criminals. And so the next Thursday we were doing a show, and he said, come with me. And he took me to Alameda Park, and I'm sure that's where I met you. And there were good Christian counselors and Westmont kids.
Yeah, it was called, we created these things called neighborhood navigation centers. And so behavioral wellness, sitting at case management, care for paws for dog care. We had churches providing food. We had Westmont students providing just relationship and care and, someone to listen to and talk to. It's kind of a holistic approach, right? Yeah. So the idea is people have an open window. They have a moment where they want help. But you have to make it easy for people. I heard this one story about this one guy who had to, on his bike, to get housing. He had to ride his bike, this was years ago, we're better now, in one day to 7 different appointments on his bike in order to get into housing. So you can't do that with people that don't have resources. No. And again, we talked about it.
And the dang government's making you, and the NGOs are making you, you got to do it on the internet. Well, these people don't have internet.
No, sometimes it's difficult. They don't have addresses, or usually they do have phones, but it's hard, again, with all the trauma you're experiencing to keep up with all that. So So, and I think I want to go back to the Father Bob thing because he's a wonderful friend.
Okay.
But I think, what did you learn? Because I think we talked about this. I think people have misconceptions about people experiencing homelessness. And when you start to move out more and more into talking with more people, I think that kind of falls away. And we also talked about, hey, there are people in houses or who don't have houses who you wouldn't necessarily want to hang out with, but it's kind of true of a cross sector of humanity, not just people on the streets.
Something that that you, I think, are the catalyst for, but I first want to finish a story that came out of a mission conference. A few years ago, there was a guy there, and from Carpinteria, a minister, lay minister maybe, and he identified, or he was counseling girls who had been trafficked and were out of that, and he opened a little candle shop on Linden, and they made candles and sold them, and that's how they supported the ministry.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's still doing it, but it was a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to go back with Father Bob, he is a piece of work. He and I got to know each other. The Presbyterian Church has times that they have a series of potlucks, and I invited Father Bob to come to a potluck, and he met several of our people, and it was a wonderful experience. And there was a little service afterwards, and he stayed for it, and the joke is from between Father Bob and I, forgive me, Father Bob, is we don't use real wine. Christ didn't drink grape juice. And the other is that his church doesn't accept my confession. I have to become a member to go to communion there. And
You weren't ready to do
I
that.
always tease them, you can come to communion at my church, but you won't be reciprocal. So churches have a structure.
Oh, yeah. You guys will work it out,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
We've got 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to run out of time in 20 minutes. Give us, you talked about the panel and what it's going to do. Who else is on it, and what do they contribute that, like, not just you?
The panel, you mean?
The breakout panel.
Oh, the breakout panel. Yeah, it's me, Kayla, and we have a Westmont student. So for me, I'm also, I think I told you, I'm 60, done 20 years of kind of working with populations on the other side of the postcard.
Yeah.
I feel like the next generation wants to do this work too, wants to do it well. And so we do a lot of work with Westmont students. So it's also a major desire of mine to help college students, help Westmont students understand how to do this work. So anything we do, and we've really pushed with the missions conference, like we need to get the next generation in leadership. So anything we do, we're trying to bring students in to teach anything they've learned. So we have interns that have interned with us and learned about all these issues, so let's give them teaching opportunities. So the primary goal of my breakout session is, let's get churches signed up to be spaces of love, purpose, and belonging. So, but it's work.
Get churches lined up
to be spaces of love, purpose, and belonging.
Okay.
Because what's happening is if there's a 13-year-old girl who's having struggles at home, or her parents aren't necessarily around, and I just at this Santa Maria event,
yes,
one of the people talked about Swiss cheese. She said it's Swiss cheese. We all have holes. We all have vulnerabilities. Traffickers are very good. Exploiters are very good about finding vulnerabilities. So if you post something on social media, you're 13, you say, my family doesn't love me, or I don't have any friends. They are online and they are aware that you posted that, and they friend you, and they say, hey, beautiful, how come you don't have any friends? You got to be kidding me. I'll be your friend. So it's a recruiting process, So what churches need to be aware of, number one, are we helping our kids? Are we helping our families? Are we helping our young people understand whatever they post on social media, there are, and I don't want to get people scared, like around every corner there's something happening. But the reality is there are people 24/7 on looking at all these sites. So what you post, other people are aware. So can we help churches help their families and their kids? And can we give lenses to them that they need to embrace people as they are, not as they should be? That's a Brennan Manning quote. I don't know if you've ever heard of Brennan Manning, but he's passed away now, but went to all kinds of conferences where he spoke, and that's what he talked about, is we need to be people that embrace people as they are, not as they should be. So not judging people for whatever background they have, whatever political party, whatever they look like, whatever they say their gender is, right? We have to embrace them and listen to them and have eyes to see and welcome them. That's Jesus as shepherd. He shepherds. He got in trouble all the time for hanging out with people that other people said don't hang out with.
Sinners and tax collectors.
Sinners and tax collectors and lepers and all kinds of people that the society said, no, don't mix. He said, no, you need to. And he actually asked for workers. He said, you need to pray for workers. So in my mind, we need shepherds. We need loving, pastoral, lay leader. It doesn't have to be a pastor. It can be, it could be a mom. It could be another high school student who has eyes to see people and their vulnerabilities and care for them. If they have love, purpose, and belonging in their life, they won't turn to, they're least likely to be exploited because they're not going to look to a Romeo pimp for those things.
It struck me, I'm old enough, that the bad people who were going to exploit the young girl, young boy, met him at the Greyhound bus. You're saying the new Greyhound bus is the internet.
Yeah.
That's where the person who's vulnerable can be exploited.
Yeah, there are literally, I don't remember the data right now, but there are literally thousands of ads right now in our county. If somebody wants to find somebody, they can buy someone tonight, right? So there's also the risk factors of they're aware of they're aware of the school, they're around the schools, they're around the shelters, they're around where foster kids are staying. They're looking for people that have vulnerabilities. So we have to really make sure our systems of care for all those individuals are solid. So all those things are needed, but we just need to be aware.
It's not on the bus, at the bus station.
It could be. They look at it could be there.
It's not just on the internet. It's everywhere in society to watch for these people in need. And
said that Jesus went through every town and village, and he was he felt compassion for the vulnerable, and then he said, pray for workers, because he said, I need other hands and feet, right? And according to the truth is that we were given the Holy Spirit, we were empowered. Christ knew he was leaving. He said, now I want the church to do what I was doing. And this is part of it. We need to mobilize a lot of people to be with and alongside.
In the mission field, we've found that you can go into most hostile areas, but what you send is teachers and medical people. You don't send a hard-preaching evangelical missionary. That's kind of what you're talking about on the street.
Yeah.
You don't grab some young kid and say, have you found Christ? You grab them and say, can I buy you a meal? Can you?
Yeah, and you got to also recognize, if you take 2 steps back, a lot of these kids might be coming from Christian homes. How they feel about the church, how they feel about Christians is not good sometimes. So you have to start, what I talk about, it's like you're behind the marathon line already. So the only authentically do you care about them? That's what happens. If you care about people, at some point you'll get into the spiritual conversation, you'll get to that reality. It's probably not, for the most part, your starter.
There are other people on your panel right? Your breakout.
Not for that session. The panel, there's a larger panel.
Okay,
That
tell me.
panel, Landon Rank, I think, and I think, who else is on that panel? There's two other people on the panel with me.
What are they talking about?
I think we're all talking about how we've been able to do this work for a long time. So there's a panel up front, which is not a breakout room, and then there's a few of us that are talking about our kind of how did we sustain this work over time. So I think it's more about if people want to do this long term, how are they going to do that?
Yeah. And people can get all of this whether they want it or not, but a box lunch and pastries and coffee for $45.
Yeah.
That's a mission.
Yeah.
When is it?
It's on February 1st.
That's a Saturday.
Yeah,
We're
it's a
doing
Saturday.
religious things on a Saturday.
Yeah.
I frequently drive through the parking lot of the Presbyterian Church and praise the Lord for this facility that He's given to the community. And, meetings like this, that aren't the Presbyterians forcing it down your throat. It's the community and several different churches and groups. And so it's there's so much cross-pollination. I guess the word is synergism. In what you're doing. And so do you know anything about the keynote speaker?
A little bit, not as much because I'm not really on the team that makes the decision of who's coming. But yeah, not a heck of a lot.
So that's
Just do more studying myself, but
that's in the afternoon.
yeah, I think he's probably doing something in the morning and afternoon. Usually the keynote does couple of things.
Good for young people? Getting some of the Westmont kids to come?
I think so. I hope there's also there's a generational challenge in the church, right? One of the reasons why I originally I'm no longer pastoring a local church is because I kind of brought to the attention of the church, like, hey, the amount of young people going to church from over the past 40 years goes down every year.
Yeah.
So we have to, in my mind, the way that we fix that is we put young people in leadership and we allow them to create the kind of church that they know their own generation. I'm 60. I still work with Westmont students, but I don't understand the generation necessarily, right? Do you know what I mean? And if they want to develop things where young people are going to come, we should do that with them. We should allow them to create the structure in which other young people will come.
Well, we got to let them know that they can come for free, and
At the mission conference, for sure.
And they'll still get food.
Yeah.
And there'll be a praise band. There'll be great music.
Yeah, it's an awesome opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're recruiting a bunch of, we're really wanting young people to come. And as I said, for me, it's more about getting myself out of the way now and getting younger people to become the people that are now talking about homelessness, human trafficking, how to work with immigration, how to bring solutions. Polarization is not, as we polarize in some ways politically, right? That's not going to help us when it comes down to how are we going to, in my mind, in God's eye, kingdom of heaven, there's no homelessness, there's no slavery. Go back to Exodus. It's a part of our history, abolishing slavery. And the reason why that in the book of Exodus, I was just thinking about it, he freed the slaves, right? And it was not just Israelites that went out. There were other people groups that went out during the time of freedom. And then as Pharaoh chased them, I always struggled. Why did he wipe out Pharaoh's army, right? Because he didn't want people to go back to slavery. Slavery is not okay. And we need, politically, both or multiple sides, whatever political party or whoever you are, we need everyone to understand and work together on issues like that.
Yeah. The my mind just drifted. It'll come back to me. It seems to me that all of this comes back to individual effort, individual decisions, and yet it's a decision that can't be forced, that things like the mission conference is teaching how to get to people to where, do you know who Christ is? And you know, a young person raised in the church can't give an appropriate answer to that. Partially, oh, he's the Son of God.
Oh, yeah.
Well, then who did he do? What did he do for you?
But I think most people, like if you go, I talked about the incarnation in 1 John. It's a 1 John. It's a second chapter. I'm trying to remember where it is.
In the Bible.
Well, John says that we came to know Christ because we could touch him, we could feel him, we could listen to him. And what we need to help people understand is if you're in your church building in the pew and not out in the neighborhood, people want to know, they want to know that you genuinely care. They want to know who you are. They want to know, and Jesus, why did Jesus spend 30 years? God isn't Jewish. People have a misconception. Jesus was born into Judaism because, right?
Right.
He learned all the ways. He learned how. He learned the culture. He understood the people before he started his ministry, and so that gave him credibility. So embed in culture, gain credibility over time, prove yourself as a genuine, loving person. And once we begin to do that again, people understand who Christ is more through our actions than through our dogma. Dogma, in my mind, follows our actions. We need to understand it, but if we can't love our neighbor, right, they're not gonna, why would they listen to us? If all I have is judgment, that's at least my story. I came to know Christ because I understood who he was, and there were a few people in my life that genuinely loved me and cared for me. All the other stuff came later. So I think that's what the mission conference is trying to do, is like help us embed in the places we are, see people for what they are, genuinely love and care for them. The words come, but maybe it's a reverse order. It's how we live. I call it orthopraxy, right practice before right belief.
Well,
I give you a lot there, I'm sorry.
no, people for what they are, but in seeing what you do, meeting them where they are.
Yeah.
You know, because you can't tie a rope around them and drag them to the mission conference.
No, why were we in the park with people experiencing homelessness?
Yeah.
Where they're allowing us to come into their space, that we're not saying forcing them into our space.
I've got two tough questions for you.
Okay.
There's more slaves today in this country than ever, percentage-wise even. You go back to the Civil War, so 20% were slaves. There's more than that in our society today. How do we end that? And you have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. You end it by everyone understanding that that's the reality, and then you build a system in which, to me, the key one is the prevention one. You have to, if you can, there's so many angles of things you have to do. I mean, I can think about 100 different things we have to do, even from how do you help buyers not buy again, right? There are processes where you have to stop the trafficking. But I would say there's enough money in this county to fund the work that we need to do the 10 or 20 key things. But it's going to take finances, it's going to take people, and it's going to take sustained efforts. So yeah, it's a depressing number. I mean, if you look, California, I think that's the largest, fastest growing trafficking is in California in our nation. So, but do the small things, do the wins, get the case manager for Noah's Anchorage, help women experiencing homelessness no longer be homeless in Lompoc, so there's no vulnerability to trafficking. Do those things neighborhood by neighborhood, and you'll see it over time.
I have a bone to pick with you in the last 3 minutes.
Okay, good.
The point in time count of homelessness, I've always, I really believe that it's a bunch of people in the homeless business who want to build it up. When you do that, you're
Yeah.
part of the point. Do you delineate between the guy sleeping in the gutter and the person who's chosen to sleep in his camper or car? Do you count those differently? Or are they all part of the homeless count, which to me dilutes the power of the homeless count?
No, that's not. You count them all equally, but you do a survey, so you get them into our homeless management information system with exactly what's going on, hopefully in their life. So the point in time count is a once a year thing, right?
Yeah.
The key thing is the ongoing case management that continues to work with people. And so the survey over time, the vulnerability index or whatever we use later, helps us understand what they need to get off the streets. Somebody just may need a job. Somebody may need addiction specialists. So many different things. Maybe a family living in a vehicle. They just need to get in a transition house. So there's an understanding of distinct needs, but you need to have an understanding of how many people are out there, if that makes sense. Because the money we get from the federal government is tied to the amount of people who are experiencing homelessness in our county. So we have to get that number right. And point in time count is only one time of doing it. The ongoing yearly efforts of case management is primarily where we get our data.
Yeah, my own opinion, you can carry it back to the powers that be, is that to delineate between the really down and out homeless and the people who sometimes by choice are living in their van. And they're not the same person.
But go back to why the person's living in the van. You may find out something unique.
So how can people help you?
Contact me. I think you would see my email on the screen there.
Yeah.
Feel free to email me. Go to safesantabarbara.org. If you really want to help us kind of fight human trafficking, that's another way they can support.
Well, thank you. Very
Thank you.
enlightening.
Thank
I
you.
learned a lot.
Good time.
You didn't even hear me. Nobody hears me.
Oh, no. Thank you so much.
Thank you.